This is a lesson for Chapter 8, Section 3, titled Multiplying Binomials, Day Number 1. So it says to simplify each product using the FOIL method. So the FOIL method is just an acronym for this: first, outer, inner, and last terms. And so we're going to take a look at it. It's just a quick way of thinking about it as you're going ahead and multiplying two binomials. So when we're multiplying, you don't just multiply k by k and 9 by 5. No, we have to take the k and we multiply it by this k right here. Like we said, those are called the first terms. And so we do k times k, and that gives us k squared. The outside terms are multiplying the k by the 5, and that's the part that people will forget to do. So multiplying k by the 5 are called the outside terms. So we'll write down k times by 5, and so I'll write that plus 5k. So 5k is the same thing as k times by 5. So now I've multiplied the first terms and the outer terms. I multiply k by each of the terms. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the negative 9. So I multiply the negative 9 by this k here. Those are called the inside terms, the inner terms. So I'll write plus, and then it's going to be negative 9 times by k. So that makes a minus 9k. And then the negative 9 needs to be multiplied by the 5, and those are called my last terms. So I'll write down plus negative 9 times by 5 makes a minus 45. So I go ahead and collect like terms. These two terms will collect together, and so I'm left here with a negative 4k. That's what I got when I collected these two. And then I just bring down the k squared and the minus 45, and that's it. And that's my answer. So k squared minus 4k minus 45. So we'll use that same method with these next problems. And so we'll start with the 7z times the 4z. Those are the first terms. So I'm going to write down f just for first right now. And I'll write 7z times by 4z. And so from there, that makes a 28z squared. So moving on to the next terms, the outside terms. Not the inside yet. So let's fix that. So the outside terms, and so that's going to be the 7z times by the negative 6. So 7z times by negative 6. That makes a minus 42z. And so over here, in my inside terms, now I move on to the 3 times the 4. So again, the 7 and the 6 were the outside terms. 3 and the 4 are the inside terms. So that's going to be 3 times by 4z. And so that's going to give me 12z, and that's a positive, so I'll put the plus sign there. And then I have the last terms. So the last terms are 3 multiplied by the negative 6. So 3 times by negative 6 gives me a negative 18. So I can go ahead and collect these outside and inside terms because they have the same variable raised to the same power. So I still have that 28z squared. Nothing changed with that. These two terms subtract to make a negative 30z. And then over here I just bring down the minus 18. And that's the answer I get. So that's the product. Let's take a look at this next one. So 6c and 9c, those are the first terms. So the first terms are going to end up being 54c squared. So then I move on to the 6c and then 8, and that's a negative 8 too because of the minus sign there. So those are called the outside terms. And so the outside terms make a negative 48c. And so now I'm done with those two, so I'll move on to my inside terms. Negative 2 and 9 are my two inside terms, and those multiply to make a negative 18c. Negative 2 times 9c makes negative 18c. And then negative 2 times by the negative 8, watch the two signs there, negative and a negative. My last terms make a positive. 2 times 8 makes 16. So I'll go ahead and collect these. Now notice these are the same sign, so I have to add here. And so I end up with, again, 54c squared. That gets brought down. And then I add these two together, and the sign stays the same. So that makes 16. Carry a 1. 4 and 1 make 5, plus 1 makes 6. So 66c, and then plus the 16. And that's the answer there. And moving on to the next one here. So a little bit tougher because we got the p squared here. So I'm going to multiply the first terms here, and so I'm going to write this out all the way. So 4p squared times by 3p, that's where I'm getting 12p to the third power. And so the outside terms Those are the first terms there. Outside terms are 4p and the negative 1. So 4p squared actually times by negative 1. That's where I'm getting the minus 4p squared from. And then the inside terms, and so I'll move on to the 2 times by the 3p. So that makes a 6p. And then the last terms, 2 and the negative 1. So 2 times by negative 1 gives me a negative 2. So in this case, in this 6p was a positive because it was a positive 2 times by a 3p. So here there's no terms to collect, so I'm just going to rewrite it. And again, this is in descending order, highest exponent to lowest exponent, so it is in simplified form, standard form. So those are factoring or multiplying using binomials or multiplying binomials. Let's take a look at this problem here. And so here we have to look at what the surface area it says is. And so the surface area of a cylinder is when we have basically two circles. And so we've got a circle on the top and a circle on the bottom. And then we've got this lateral surface that goes around those two circles. And so what it makes, if I went ahead and cut it down the middle and then pulled it apart, what it would make is this shape here. It would make a rectangle. So this is kind of the general shape of what a cylinder looks like. And so this part right here represents the height of the cylinder, and this gets wrapped around the circles. This is the circumference. And so the circumference of a circle is typically d pi, but diameter can also be represented as 2 times the radius pi. And that's the way I'm going to use it. And so basically the area of this rectangle is going to be 2r pi, so 2 times the radius, or diameter times pi, times by height. And so that's the same thing as just saying 2r h pi. And so it means the same thing. So I just put pi last because it's an irrational number. And so over here we have the radius. And the area for a circle is pi r squared. So basically what we've got is two circles, 2 pi r squared. Since there's two circles, that's why I put the 2 there. And then plus a rectangle. And the rectangle, again, is just going to end up being 2 r pi times by the height. And so what we can do now is we can factor. We haven't even used these numbers yet. We'll use those at the end. So what I'm going to do here is this is where factoring comes into play. So I see there's a common factor between each of these terms. Each of them has a 2. But each of them also has r and pi. So the first one here, the circle, has 2 r's, but I can only pull out 1 because the rectangle just has 1. So now I've got this 2r pi times by, and then I've got just an r left over from the circle, and from the rectangle, well, it's just the height, and so plus h. So now I've come up with a formula that will be a whole lot easier to use with these expressions here, and that's what I'm going to end up using. So this is where we use the factoring. We use the factoring to help us simplify something so that now we can go ahead and plug it into an equation, and it makes it a lot easier. And so I'll go ahead and plug in what I've got. 2 times by the radius. So the radius represents this expression right here, this x plus 4. So I write 2 times x plus 4, and then times by pi. I'm just going to leave it in terms of pi for now. And then I'm multiplying that by the radius, which is that x plus 4, and then plus, and then I've got this expression right here, which is the height. And that x plus 7 is the height. So I'll put parentheses around there to show that's the radius, and the height was x plus 7. And so now I'll go ahead and simplify. So I can distribute the 2 over this, so I get 2x plus 8, and then this is multiplied by pi, so I'm going to just pull the pi on the front here for now. And then over here, I can go ahead and add the 2 terms together. See, everything's being added here, so I can just add x plus x, and again, this is big parenthesis here to show that it needs to be combined together. So I got 2x plus 11. I got that by just combining the x's. X and x make 2x. 4 and 7 make 11. So now I can multiply. Now I left the pi on the outside. I didn't multiply by that because it'll just be more confusing at the end. I'll multiply it at the end of the problem. So I'm going to use the FOIL method here. So let's go with FOIL. First, outer, inner, and last. And so I've still got that pi on the outside that I'll multiply at the end. And so I'm going to just leave it here so I don't forget about it. And I'm going to multiply just the first terms, 2x and 2x. So 2x times 2x makes 4x squared. Now the outside terms. Those are the first terms. Outside are 2x and 11. So I got 2x times by 11, so that makes a positive 22x. Now I have the inside, 8 times by 2x. So 8 times by 2x makes 16x, positive 16x. And the last terms, I've got 8 times 11. So 8 times by 11 makes 88. And so now I still have this pi I have not multiplied by. See, I just multiplied the numbers because it was easier to deal with the pi at the end. So I'll collect some like terms yet. So I've got 4x squared, and then here I combine those two. And that makes a positive 38x plus 88. And then I still have this pi term here. And so I go ahead and now I'll go ahead and distribute the pi over each of these parts. And I'm left with this, 4 pi x squared plus 38 pi x and plus 88 pi. And that's what I end up getting for this problem. And these are units to the second power because it is surface area. So those are the problems that you're going to see on tonight's homework. Good luck.